Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. Доброе утро, уважаемые дамы и господа. My name is Lou Malmovsky, and I am the chairman of the National Board of Directors of the Canada, Eurasia, Russia Business Association. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to our annual Cerba Eurasia Mining Conference. For those of you who are not aware, this is in fact the 16th annual event. An event that has been organized even quite a few years before the formation of Cerba. Of course, March the 8th is a special holiday as well. And I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of all the gentlemen in the room to wish a very, very happy International Women's Day to our colleagues of the fairer sex, especially colleagues who help keep Cerba running, Katya, Yulia, and all of our volunteers. Not only do our female colleagues make working in mining more interesting, but they make life more interesting generally, and it's a well-deserved holiday, even though when I was growing up in Canada, it wasn't deemed to be a holiday. In any event, here we are again in an environment of very low commodity prices. This week in the press you'll see some more optimism than we've seen in the last couple of years regarding the fact that we might have in fact reached bottom in terms of the commodity cycle. Nevertheless, we've managed to attract a pretty decent audience, and I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us. The countries for which Cerba exists, Russia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, and others, are bound to be at the center of mineral exploration and development for the long term. We've all survived the commodity price cycle before. These are very prospective countries, and prices notwithstanding, global interest in mining in our region is there. It may wane occasionally, but we at Cerba are very proud to make mining a focus of what we do, and to try, not just through this event, but throughout the year, attract the interest of Canadian investors, Canadian mining companies, Canadian equipment and services providers. We're very honored today to have the ambassadors of the Republic of Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation to Canada. Thank you, gentlemen. They will be making some remarks. And we'll start off the event very shortly. But before I call on our esteemed guests, I wanted to make a few remarks on the macro environment that has indelibly affected the mining industry around the world and in our Eurasian region. This is a picture full of contradiction. As I mentioned, the commodity cycle hopefully is at its nadir and is starting to rebound. Working for Kinross Gold Corporation as I do, I'm very pleased to see in the last 2 months that gold has made a pretty good recovery. How ironic, I suppose, that the Canadian government has sold all of its gold holdings very recently. That's another discussion all on its own. The other contradictions come from the prolonged economic difficulties experienced around the world, but in our region in particular. The Kazakh tenge has shed more than half of its value since August of 2015. The Russian ruble has lost 76% of its value and is hovering just below 95 rubles to the US dollar. Oil prices broke the $30 barrier, although in the last week or 10 days we've seen a rebound. We're above $37, I believe. As an owner of cars in Canada, I'm very pleased that the price is very low at the pumps. But sadly, that doesn't do much for the economies of the region that we're responsible for, and the serious decline in GDP in our Eurasian region is nothing to be pleased about. Back to gold, in Russia, production was up 2% to almost 290 tons in 2015. That's a very positive trend, and the reduction in the ruble has made local operating costs much lower. Kazakhstan increased gold production by almost 27% in 2015, producing almost 64 tons of raw, semi-finished, and gold concentrate during that period. The irony here is that for mining investors and those interested in our region, production margins have improved considerably, and mining assets have become more affordable. We've still yet to see investors taking action on this front, but we remain hopeful. This is just a brief introduction because in our first session, JP Natkin will provide much more detail and color to the macroeconomic and political picture in his presentation. And although Cerba is a non-political business association, the business of our members in the Eurasian region, and in Russia and Ukraine specifically, is clearly affected by the political tensions, and this has deterred potential new entrants into the markets that we cover. However, as an association, we're doing our best to provide information and services, such as the event we're all attending today. We are convinced that maintaining trade and investment flows is one of the best ways to overcome political conflicts. Additionally, we've taken other initiatives at Cerba, and as Ambassador Zhigalov will surely describe, Cerba has come together with the Kazakh International Chamber of Commerce to help launch the Kazakhstan-Canada Business Council, a body that we're confident can raise the level and the quality of our business relations between our two countries. We're pleased today to feature presentations about developments in the three leading countries in the region, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine. I'm in my 9th year at Kinross, and I have to say that I would have been hard-pressed to predict even 5 or 6 years ago how far reforms in mining regulation in these countries have gone in this relatively brief period. While this year we do not have a delegation from Uzbekistan, we do have Canada's honorary consul in that country, Professor Alexander Antonov, who is in attendance and who will make a presentation about mining opportunities in Uzbekistan. And Professor Antonov knows what he talks about as a professional geologist. In our afternoon session, we'll have presentations from senior and junior miners with extensive experience in the region, as well as some information about an interesting opportunity in Iran, a little outside of our region, but compelling nonetheless. And this too is something none of us could have imagined a few years ago, while sanctions were still affecting that country. I'm very hopeful that you will find our conference not only informative, but also useful in determining that the region is not only prospective in mining terms, but it's open for business, and that reforms in mining regulation are evolving in a positive direction. And this is making investment in mineral exploration and mining much more smooth and even more profitable for miners and financial investors from around the world. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Ambassador of the Russian Federation in Canada, Alexander Nikitich Darchiev, to the podium to provide us with his welcoming remarks. Ambassador Darchiev.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'm greatly honored to extend greetings and welcome the participants of the annual International Mining Conference organized by Canada, Eurasia, Russia Business Association. I'm especially pleased as well to extend my warmest greetings to wonderful ladies in this audience, and in Canada and Eurasia with International Women's Day. As an ambassador whose mission is to make relations with the host country better, It gives me a special pleasure to praise Cerba for its tireless efforts to promote bilateral business ties and to encourage Canadian companies to explore new opportunities on a vast, promising market of Eurasian Economic Union. I would also like to thank Cerba for its invaluable contribution to mutually beneficial Russian-Canadian cooperation in the mining industry, which has far-reaching historical roots and, despite all bumps on the road, continues to progress successfully, remaining an essential pillar of our business relationship. Despite the difficult situation in the global economy, with world prices for practically all mineral products falling down drastically, miners in Canada and Russia has weathered the storm rather well. While in this country production of gold, uranium and potash increased last year, and production of ore and copper ore remained stable, in Russia the output of coal, uranium, iron and non-ferrous ores was expanded as well. In the current unfavorable conjuncture which could bring about global economic disturbance and recession, Russia consistently keeps its economy open, determined to overcome combined negative trends by improving the overall investment climate. Legal mechanisms, tax and anti-monopoly legislation are being improved, with administrative burden on business being reduced. It should be noted that while Russia's share in total world investment to geological exploration of solid minerals increased by more than 5% over the period of 2013 to 2015, important changes have been made to simplify substantially procedures for licensing fields for mineral exploration by extending the so-called application principle. My colleagues from the Ministries of Natural Resources and Economic Development who are taking part in the conference will surely tell much more and in details about the application procedure to geological exploration. Mine is a more humble and focused task to do my best, together with Cerba, to stimulate positive rebound in Russian-Canadian trade. We can make a substantial headway in our bilateral cooperation, which is flagshipped by success stories in Russia of many Canadian companies, first of all, Kinross Gold. It should not be forgotten that doing business in Russia these days means substantial expansion to a larger market of Eurasian Economic Union, where a single area of 183 million people with free flow of capital, goods and labor has been created. So, to explore these new openings, to have stable mining business done on Eurasian terrain, through diplomacy and normalcy, as opposed to name-calling and brinksmanship practiced quite recently, are pivotal and highly welcome. There is now a room for optimism, given this country's October vote for change, which involves an important shift from self-isolation in foreign policy to engagement and dialogue. Proceeding from that premise, constructive interaction of our business communities does have a crucial potential to revitalize bilateral cooperation based on pragmatism and common sense. By Closing my remarks, I would like to wish all participants fruitful discussions, mutually beneficial solutions, and most importantly, good luck in the implementation of your projects. Me and my colleagues will continue to remain attentive to your ideas and proposals, being open and always ready to assist you in coming to Russia and Eurasian Economic Union and in finding true partners there. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Darchiev. I'd like to call on Ambassador Konstantin Zhigalov of the Republic of Kazakhstan to add his remarks as well.
First of all, I would like to join the warm congratulations to all ladies who are with us today during this one of the best holidays in the world. Счастья вам, здоровья, уважаемые женщины. Для вас это подвиг, что во время вашего праздника вы находитесь с нами на горно-промышленной конференции. Dear Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency, Ambassador Darchiev, distinguished speakers and participants of the conference, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Cerba chapter in Toronto for organizing today's event, which gives us a good opportunity to discuss the current status and prospects of business partnership between Canada and Eurasia, including Kazakhstan. For me, the 5th time in a row. Our country attached a great importance to the development of its mining sector and metallurgy, and this is why the topic of today's event is very important to us. Despite the rise of a new global economic crisis, in 2015, Kazakhstan's GDP growth was at 1.2. Actually, we had a similar result in the worst year for us during the first wave of global economic crisis in 2009. In 2014, for example, the GDP growth in Kazakhstan was 4.3. We were able to compensate the decline in the commodity sector by the growth of production in the non-extractive sectors. Thus, within the framework of the industrialization program in 2015, about 120 new production facilities worth more than $5 billion were commissioned and more than 10,000 new permanent jobs were created. In total, during 2010 and 2015, about 85,000 people had received new permanent jobs and 890 projects had been realized, 90% of which had received funding from the private sector. According to a basic model scenario which is taking into account oil prices at $40 per barrel, Kazakhstan's GDP growth in 2016 can amount to 2.1%, but the government has also developed a scenario of the socio-economic development of the country which takes into account possible oil prices at the levels of $30 and even $20 per barrel. Last year, our country initiated large-scale institutional reforms in 5 areas: improving public governance, ensuring the rule of law, promoting economic growth, strengthening Kazakhstan's identity, and increasing transparency and accountability of the government. 100 concrete steps action plan has been adopted by the government of Kazakhstan in order to implement these reforms. Among the important directions of the institutional reforms, there is a transition of Kazakhstan to the international system of mineral accounting standards adopted by the Committee for Mineral Reserves International Reporting Standards. We are also interested in studying the Canadian experiences in this area. We have already received the concrete results in the direction. Thus, a visit to Canada of Mr. Sarsenov, Vice Minister of Investment and Development of Kazakhstan, also Mr. Bazarbai Nurbayev, Chair of the Geology and Subsoil Use Committee, and Mr. Galim Nurjanov, the CEO of Kaz Geology National Company, which was arranged by our embassy in July last year, facilitated realization of the above-mentioned task. As a result of negotiations in Ottawa and Montreal, there has been an agreement reached on the involvement of the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum in the process of transformation of Kazakhstan's system of geological reporting on mineral reserves, as well as introduction of international standards of mineral reserve calculation to enhance the attractiveness of mining sector to foreign investors and junior companies. Kazakhstan consistently simplified the procedure of granting the subsoil use rights by introducing the system of auctions. In the nearest future, we will fully go to the Australian model of subsoil use, which provides for a simplified procedure for all types of geological operations, including exploration, evaluation, and development of mining fields. Thus, past November, the procedure of granting the subsoil use rights based on the principle first come, first served was launched. Together with the consultant of the World Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and new Code of Mineral Resources is being developed by using the best international practice. It's expected that the document will be adopted by the end of 2016, and starting from 2017, regulation in this area will be conducted taking into account the best international experience. Moreover, creation of an international financial center in Kazakhstan on the platform of the International Exhibition Expo 2017 will help to establish favorable conditions for foreign investors. Based on the experience of the Dubai International Financial Center, the Astana Financial Center will be a separate jurisdiction based on the principles of the English law, with a preferential tax regime and an independent financial court. We are confident that the Astana Financial Center is going to be the core of Kazakhstan's financial infrastructure, and in the future it will become the financial hub of entire Central Asia. International experts recognize the effectiveness of the reforms undertaken by Kazakhstan, even in these hard conditions. Past October, the World Bank and International Financial Corporation published their Doing Business 2016 rating, according to which Kazakhstan has moved up 36 positions over the last year by landing on the 41st spot. Our country received high ranking in the such categories as enforcing contracts, 9th place, paying taxes, 18, registering property, 19, starting a business, 21st, and protecting minority investors, 25th. In general, the authors of the report note that the last year Kazakhstan implemented 7 reforms, thus setting the best outcome in the world. During the implementation of the objectives of the new economic policy, we are interested in attracting foreign investment, as well as transfer of knowledge and new technologies to our country. I am confident that a Kazakhstan-Canadian Business Council, created in October 2015, with the support of Cerba and the Chamber of International Commerce of Kazakhstan, will contribute to this process. It's expected that the first ever meeting of the Business Council, with participation of its co-chairs, CEO of Kazatomprom Askar Zhumagaliyev and CEO of Kameka Corporation Tim Gitzel, will be held in May 2016 in Astana. We also invite all Canadian companies interested in partnership with Kazakhstan to take part in the activities of the Kazakhstan-Canada Business Council. And in conclusion, I would like to wish all the participants of the conference fruitful discussions and successful negotiations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Zhigalov. Our next speaker, we're very, very pleased to have with us Andrew Cheadle, who is the Executive Director of PDAC. This conference has now, I think for the 6th or 7th year in a row, been held as part of the PDAC events, and we're very pleased to be here, and pleased also to have Andrew give us some words of welcome.
Well, good morning, and it is indeed a great pleasure to be here at my first Cerba event. And like those before me, I do wish to acknowledge that this is indeed the International Women's Day. A few statistics for you on this. This day was first celebrated in 1908, and in Russia for the first time in 1913, so well over 100 years ago. It may also be of great interest to you that the great PDAC event, the staff team that puts this event on is 15 women, and only women. So, it is my pleasure to be here today at what has become an important annual event here at the PDAC convention. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that this is indeed the 16th year that Cerba has organized an event at or around our convention. Congratulations on that. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the Canadian companies that are operating in various parts of Eurasia, such as Dundee Precious Metals in Armenia, Centerra Gold, Global Cobalt, Kinross, and Silverberry in Russia, and Chemico and Hansa Resources in Kazakhstan. These companies represent something that Canada is quite rightly proud of, its global expertise in exploration and mining. Not many people realize that half of the properties owned by the Canadian mining companies listed on the TMX are indeed outside of Canada, which illustrates the global presence of the Canadian exploration and mining industry. These statistics also highlight the mobility of mining capital. Companies today have a lot of options with respect to where they choose to explore and ultimately develop their mines. While geology is of course still the primary driver, the policy environment is also a critical factor in company decision making. This is why a number of jurisdictions around the world use the convention as an opportunity to showcase what they are doing. First, they want to obviously showcase the jurisdiction to attract exploration and mining investment. And this factor is often what we might refer to as the X factor, that a company may choose one jurisdiction over another. Showcasing your jurisdiction is of course very, very important, as sometimes companies are not aware of the actions governments have taken to create an enabling environment for exploration and mining. So for example, the release of a new geoscience information that highlights prospective areas, or investments in infrastructure that open up new mining districts, or indeed, as we're hearing, constructive policy changes to economic or mining law. Jurisdictions also use the convention as an opportunity to gather intelligence on what companies think about their investment in climate, and to prioritize what actions they may take to make their country more attractive over others. This is something even more important than showcasing what's working, as it allows your jurisdiction to keep improving and staying ahead of your competitors. The opportunity to both communicate the good and identify opportunities to improve is why the convention has representatives from over 100 countries every year, making it the preeminent global platform for mining leaders to meet and dialogue and talk and network. It's also an important opportunity for us at PDAC to learn about what other countries are doing, to gain new ideas on how we can maintain Canada as an attractive destination. As some of you may know, we have a new government in Canada, and their first budget is going to be released later this month, on March the 22nd, which I must say is my dad's birthday. And PDAC is very hopeful that the budget will include continuing commitment to important financial and fiscal policy tools that has indeed helped Canada attract the largest share of exploration budgets for more than a decade, the Mineral Exploration Tax Credit, or often known as the METC. This federal tax incentive helps convince investors to finance high-risk, early-stage exploration activities, which are so important in the discovery of the mines of the future. As I mentioned earlier, it is not, of course, enough to discover deposits. They also need to be developed into mines. And for a large country like Canada, this can indeed be a real challenge. And when discoveries are made in remote areas, they are often far from transportation infrastructure. This is why we have also asked the federal government to invest in infrastructure in remote, mineral-rich areas, an issue that I know many Eurasian countries also face. Indeed, we have much to learn from each other. I'm very pleased to see the turnout today, and I hope and wish you all to have a very productive set of discussions. Thank you.